We've got a really, I think, landmark piece of legislation that we're going to sign here today in a minute. And before I get into why we're signing the legislation, which, just so everybody knows what it is, we are going to utilize our authority under the Constitution in the state of Florida to make sure that gold and silver are recognized as proper legal tender. So you're going to be able to conduct transactions in gold, conduct transactions in silver, and we'll talk about why that's important. But before I get into that specifically, I do think it's important to point out how Florida, we've really led the way on protecting your economic independence and your financial sovereignty, because we've seen over the last particularly 5 or 6 years a coordinated assault on the financial freedom of people here in the United States and really throughout the world by some of the powers that be. We were the leader in the entire country in banning the use of a so-called central bank digital currency. Now, this is something that was being discussed by the Federal Reserve under the Biden administration. What it would do is, so the goal of it is to eliminate cash, force everything into a digital currency. This would be one controlled by the central bank. And why would they want to do that? Well, they have more agency over your financial independence if they do it. So we recognize it as a frontal assault on your economic freedom. They were thinking about maybe doing something through an administrative order. We made it be clear in Florida that'll be dead on arrival. We will not accept that. And Congress really, I think the idea is almost dead at this point because we led so forcefully against it. But why would they want to do a central bank digital currency? Well, it goes back to other things that we have fought, such as this whole ESG idea. You remember this ESG, environment, social governance. This was very popular in elite circles a few years ago. Not so much anymore because the state of Florida, starting in many years ago, we leaned in against this and fought back. And what were they trying to do with ESG? They basically have a political agenda, leftist political agenda. They know that agenda can't actually garner enough political support at the ballot box to be enacted. And so what they decided to do was to go to some of the major economic powers in the country and in the world, things like asset managers, big banks, all these different things, and get ESG policies put through the economy without ever having to go through a legislative assembly or anything of the sort. So you saw some banks debank people that had gun stores. You saw other groups not have access to the same amount of capital based on political affiliation. You saw them go after agriculture and traditional practices, even things like raising cattle, because they said that that was contributing to global warming. And so they wanted to do this through the economy. If you give the Fed the power of a central bank digital currency, well, that opens up so many possibilities for them. They think they bought it or they could say, you know, you've already bought enough ammunition this week. You don't get we're not going to process anymore. You bought firearms. You did this. You did that. You did a lot of gas for your truck. You did too much. And so it was a way for them to impose limits on what you could purchase. That's the goal of this. That's what would end up happening. So we were against that. We were also against ESG. Now, ESG was really getting a foothold in the management of pension funds. So Florida, for example, we've got, well, the market's had some turmoil, but I mean, we've got usually, I think probably in the range of $240 billion under management in our state, under our state board of administration. What they wanted to do, and they would have the asset managers would impose these ESG policies so they wouldn't invest in companies who the ESG ideology deemed problematic. That is displacing what's best for the beneficiaries financially in favor of this ideological agenda. So we were the first state in the country to ban ESG from use in our pension funds. We moved we removed $2 billion from BlackRock that was managing it. BlackRock is a massive powerhouse leading in ESG, and we did it. And now it's interesting, recently the head of BlackRock was asked, like, well, what about ESG? You were the main proponent. He's like, oh, no. He's like, the problem with ESG, it's become toxic because you got people like Governor DeSantis always lampooning it. But the bottom line is, it was an attempt, whether it's CDBC, whether it's ESG, to use the levers of the economy to control your behavior, to try to change society in ways that they could never get support through the normal political process to do. And we really are happy that we led the fight against all of those things. And so when you're looking at things like gold and silver, the same people that push those bad policies, they would not want you doing things like gold and silver because this gives you more independence. You won't need to be wedded to a fiat currency. And it really is very much in step with what we've been talking about in Florida for many years. So you have that movement to kneecap your financial independence that is being done through the economy. But then you also just have the specter of a Congress and a federal government that has been incapable of controlling the amount of money it's borrowing, printing, and spending. And this has been happening for many, many years. When I was, I guess I was probably in college, the turn of the century, the year 2000, the state of Florida's, or the national debt was about $5.6 trillion. So we had ratified the Constitution in the late 1780s. George Washington took office in 1789. And so if you count from there till 2000, they racked up $5.6 trillion in debt. They fought a civil war, they fought 2 world wars, they had a Great Depression, they had a lot of stuff. Since the year 2000, we've gone from 5.6 trillion to almost $37 trillion in 25 years. And the trajectory now is for, in 10 years, us to be about $56 trillion in debt. We saw what happened during the financial crisis when they printed a lot of money and they said it was emergency, QE, and then they just kept doing it for the next decade. And then COVID hit and they did the same thing. And so this is the Federal Reserve making your money less valuable. This is Congress with its borrowing and spending. And people will talk about taxes and this. Inflation is a tax. When your money becomes less valuable, that's no different in outcome than if Congress were to simply just directly tax you. It's less transparent, it's more indirect, but it's having the same exact impact. And so when they do deficit spending of $2 trillion, and they say, well, we don't want to raise taxes, and I'm not arguing for that either. I'm arguing for lowering spending. But just understand, that $2 trillion deficit is a tax on you. It works its way through the economy. There's no free lunch. And that's what ends up happening. And it's a little frustrating. Elon Musk went into this Doge effort. He was getting lampooned. They're firebombing his Tesla dealerships. Media is smearing him relentlessly. His businesses suffered, all this stuff, because he basically said, look, we can't keep doing this, and we need to moderate and reduce the amount of money that the federal government is spending. And yet, we have a Republican Congress, and to this day, we're in the end of May, past Memorial Day, and not 1 cent in Doge cuts have been implemented by the Congress. That's one of the reasons why we need a balanced budget amendment to the U.S. Constitution. It's another reason why we need term limits for members of Congress. But I think what you've seen with how, and I kind of said this early on, that Doge and Elon were on a collision course with the swamp. And the question is, what would happen? And I don't think there's any question that Doge fought the swamp, and so far the swamp has won. And that's just unfortunate, but I don't think you can look at this any other way. So this is hardwired into how the people in Washington are borrowing and spending your money. But it has huge implications for the viability of our economy, our country, and everything going forward. And don't tell me it can't be done. When I became governor, so if you look at, Florida's been a state for 180 years, if you look at all the debt that's been accumulated over our entire history of statehood, just since I've been governor, we've paid off 41% of it. And we're doing more every day. So that's not adding to debt, that's reducing debt. We have the lowest per capita debt of any state in the country, and if you looked at what your share as a Florida resident is for our outstanding state debt, it's about $400 a person. What is your outstanding share for the U.S. federal debt? It's like $105,000 a person and escalating. Ours is declining. You also look at Florida, we have the lowest number of state employees per capita, don't have a big bureaucracy. We are also the second lowest in terms of spending per capita of all the 50 states. We have no income tax. We have the second lowest state tax burden of any state in the country. And we're even going to take a chunk out of local because we're going to give you relief on these property taxes. We're going to get that done. And yet, even though we have reduced debt, run big surpluses, cut a lot of taxes, I think we've cut 7 or 8 billion since I've been governor, we've also done really big things. We have increased teacher salaries more than has ever been done in the history of Florida. We've done bonuses for law enforcement up and down the state of Florida. We've done things like conserve and improve our natural resources, whether it's things like the Everglades or Florida Springs, things that are really meaningful, not just to our culture, but to our economy here in the Sunshine State. We've even done massive infusions of money for roads and transportation. I don't know if any of you have been on I-4 where we did the temporary lane expansion, but it's cut commuting times a lot. I know these things work when people just volunteer it to me and tell me, oh, thanks for doing that because we're moving better. And we've done video analysis. It's been good. And we have flooded part of our surplus into these projects because the state's growing and we need to make sure we get ahead of it. So on issue after issue, we're delivering really big things, but doing it within the context of a budget that is shedding debt for the state, that's cutting taxes for our people, and that is one of, if not the smallest footprints of any place in the country. So it can be done. Now, I don't think it is going to get done in Washington unless there's structural reform, like a balanced budget amendment, like term limits. I think the culture in Congress is very much ingrained, and I just don't see a massive difference in behavior from election to election. Who knows? Maybe we'll be surprised over the next few months. I would love to see that, but I don't think we've seen many signs of it now. So we have to assume that the borrowing, printing, and spending is likely to continue, at least for the short term. So the bill I'm going to sign today is legislation that is going to allow Florida to recognize gold and silver as legal tender in our state. And we have the ability to do that under the federal Constitution. There are only 2 states that have done it thus far. They're smaller states. We are the first large state to step up and to get this done. And this is right out of the Constitution of the United States. So this legislation will authorize money services business like check cashers or PayPal to transmit and accept payment in gold and silver. That means these precious metals can start functioning like real currency again, not just investment vehicles for the wealthy. And you notice what's happened in recent weeks and months. How has gold gone down or has gold gone up? Gold's gone up big time because investors are looking at this and they're hedging against, they see the bond yields have gone up. I think they moderate a little today, but when people start seeing that, gold is a place they're going to. So it's not just an investment, it'll be something that you're going to be able to use, and it's something that is very likely to hold its value, certainly compared to fiat currency. Now, we've seen the downgrade in the credit rating over multiple administrations. We've seen a lot of problems with the DC swamp. This is our ability to give you the financial freedom to be able to protect yourself against the declining value of the dollar. And so I'm really appreciative of the legislature for doing this. I think this is something that shows Florida is continuing to lead on a lot of the issues that matter to people, and I look forward to signing this into law momentarily. But before that, I want to bring up our great state representative, Doug Bankson, and then after that, we'll bring up Kevin Freeman.
Thank you, Governor. Wow, aren't you thankful to live in the state of Florida? This is great. Now, being a pastor and a politician, I promise this will be brief and no offerings. So, when we first went to Tallahassee, one of the things that they said was, don't fall in love with your bills. So I said, well, then I'm deep and abiding like. Because this one, really, when this came to me, it grabbed a hold of my heart because it affects so many lives. For over 190 years, gold and silver backed our currency. It was our money. However, in 1971, President Nixon removed the dollar from the gold standard. Since then, we've seen over a 90% decrease in its buying power. One of the illustrations that I've used with people and used in committee and with different representatives, if you bought a home in 1979, the average cost was $75,000. Those were the days. If you bought that same home, that same product now, it would be $531,000. However, if you had bought that in gold in 1979, it would have been 268 ounces. Today, if you bought that home, 268 ounces. Why? Because it's a tangible thing that has true value. And again, as the governor referred, we have a fiat money that has nothing behind it because in 2023, the oil dollars went away, the deal that Nixon had made. So fortunately, our founders, they guaranteed each state the constitutional right to declare gold and silver as legal tender, giving it the same capacity as the dollar to be used as currency or cash. I love the fact, and this wasn't anything that I did, but this was called House Bill 999. I thought that was very fitting. But this basically, it does four key things. Number one, it enacts the state's constitutional right to declare gold and silver as legal tender. You know, it was the states that formed the federal government, not the other way around. And I love the fact that our states are stepping up and strong leadership stepping back up and saying, no, Washington, you work for us. Number two, it establishes... Number two, it establishes the framework for depositories within the state of Florida with all the checks and balances, independent auditing, and fully insured holdings. We've all heard of FDIC. It only insures up to $250,000, but this structure will fully insure all of those holdings. Number three, it enables gold and silver as a standard weight and purity to be accessed by electronic transaction or a debit card, making it a truly functional currency. And finally, number four, it ensures the right between willing parties to transact legally with gold and silver. So simply put, it brings opportunity without obligation, fiscal stability and security, relief to the taxpayer, can I get an amen? Yeah. And will once again help Florida lead the way, becoming the gold standard for economic freedom and opportunity. You know, you can't do this without thanking the team, because this is a team sport, and I love the team. First of all, I want to thank publicly Kevin Freeman, Mike Carter. You guys are just champions. And this is where the idea initially came to me. Someone sent me, Art Alley, I think he's here somewhere in the room, sent me the transcript to your new book that now is published. And as I read through that and I saw that we had this opportunity in the Constitution to enact this, I immediately wrapped my heart around it. We reached out to you and you came and began to share this with our legislators here. And so thank you so much. And Marnie, I mean, you're the class of this act right here. That's Kevin's wife. Thank you for being here and all that you have done across the nation to put this forward. Senator Rodriguez, she's not able to be here. I believe her aide is. But it's exciting to work together across on the other side, you know, with the Senate and see something great come. In fact, we've passed two bills. You've already signed one, the tag flipping bill, if you've heard of that one. I also want to thank Representative Chip LaMarca. You know, when I came in as a freshman, I looked for someone who had some class and some clout that could help me sell this bill all across the room. And Chip LaMarca stepped up. He heard about the bill. He believed in it. And Chip, I know he's with his family celebrating 50 years of his uncle being a priest. And so they're all doing that today. I also want to thank that our House and Senate leadership both said, let's go, gave us a green light to keep moving forward. You know, with all of the things going on right now, this is about the people. And I believe they saw that. In fact, we ended up getting 100% support on both sides of the aisle, 100% vote to get this across the finish line. Now, this doesn't happen without staff, and I'm going to embarrass somebody real good because my legislative aide, Nicole Kennedy, she is the hardest working. Listen, we get to stand up here, but they're really doing the work behind the scenes to make it happen. I want to thank my church who allows me to go and serve the people, the things that are important for our state. 22 million people. It's a responsibility, and I love freedom and I love liberty. But most of all, I want to thank my family, my sweet wife, Jerry. She's right there. Give her a hand, please. I'm nothing without that living right there. My father's here, sons, different ones of the family, my sister back there, and brother-in-law. You know, it takes your family supporting you in this. You know, if you're not ready for the slings and the arrows, you need to do something else. But the bottom line, what we fight for is worth the fight. There is a cause worth fighting for, and you have to do what's right. And, you know, of course, I want to thank our wonderful governor. Aren't you thankful for this man? I'm grateful for the bold leadership, unbending and unwavering in the face of opposition. If it's right, you do it, and that's the right thing to do. And finally, I want to thank God. You know, it's easy for politicians to use "God bless America" as a punchline. You know, but the bottom line is we are here because He is a good God. He gave us this good earth. We are stewards on this planet, and what we do will affect those who follow us. And so I'm grateful. I'm very thankful to God that we live in the greatest state of the nation, that I get to serve America's governor, and that we're going to get this done for the people of Florida. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Governor, and thank you, Representative Bankson. It's an honor to be here in the free state of Florida for HB 999, a new law that can truly bless real people. It was more than 50 years ago that my father came into my bedroom and said, President Nixon took us off the gold standard. And he warned of inflation, and since then the dollar's lost 90% of its purchasing power. What cost a dime then costs over $1 today. Think of a Hershey bar. It was 10 cents when I was 10 years old. But there is good news. With this signing, Governor DeSantis will make it possible for anyone to have their own personal gold and silver standard. By making precious metals transactional under state authority as required by the U.S. Constitution, Florida enters a new era of economic justice and real prosperity. This has been a dream of mine since I was 10 years old. This is why I became an economist. I've spoken about it, debated it, written about it, and 2 years ago, I shared this idea with your governor at Liberty University. Shortly after that, with his encouragement and inspiration, I wrote the book Pirate Money to explain how it might work. And a literal army of people came alongside, starting with my wife Marnie and my business partners Mike Carter and Russell Lake, and fabulous prayer teams. Art Alley of Timothy Plan introduced me to legislators like Representative Bankson at the Governor's Club, and the wonderful people of Florida read the book and advanced the cause, making it happen. I can't take credit for the idea. It was the founders, based on their reading the Bible. You see, God hates dishonest weights and measures. He wants money to be fair for all people. And with the way the federal government racks up debt and creates money from nothing, it has been far from fair. This law, once signed, will give people a choice in how they hold their money and how they spend their money. It's going to open amazing doors for Florida, and it'll provide security for all Americans. Arkansas and Missouri have passed similar legislation, and the Texas Senate is voting today, with Louisiana and Ohio and others possible. But this legislation is groundbreaking. It's comprehensive and it's powerful. Every state can make gold and silver legal tender, and with modern technology, you can spend it with a debit card, allowing for use for everyday transactions. Governor DeSantis, you're a true leader, and this legislation is groundbreaking. This is Patriot. It's a Patriot money movement that may answer the question, what's in your wallet? For me, and many of you Floridians, we can now say gold and silver. This is pirate money. Congratulations.
All right.
Arg!
You guys want to come? We are looking at, today is the 22nd? All right, everyone. I got one more for the peanut gallery. Anybody? Here we go. There you go. Well, this is exciting. It's Florida leading again on something that I know is very important to a lot of people. And I mentioned in my opening remarks, but we have an opportunity, well now, at least temporarily, but certainly as we go to the ballot next year, on protecting, giving people constitutional protections for their own property, and really strong protection with this whole property tax situation. So we're working hard on it. It can absolutely be done. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And I think that's the best way that we can relieve the burden on folks. There's been a lot of increases in prices over the last 4 years plus, and we know there's a lot of reasons for that. The housing situation is one where there's a lot of people that wanted to move to Florida. Part of it was inflation. There's a lot going on, and you could be living in your house, and all of a sudden they're telling you it's worth twice as much, and that you have to pay more tax. And that's not easy for people. And they will never assess it lower if the housing market tanks. They'll only assess it higher if they can get more tax money from you. So we're on to that, and we're going to do something about it. So we'd appreciate your support for that. And you got great legislators here who I know want to do it, but we need to make sure everyone in the legislature is on board for property tax relief. Okay, we got any questions back there?
Governor, you have been pretty tuned with the situation involving the Tampa Bay Rays and the Orlando Dreamers. We're wondering if MLB has been in touch with you and made any requests out of you, or if it's opposite the truth, that's MLB for anything as it plays out.
I have not asked them for anything. I have been in touch with them, not necessarily recently. I mean, probably a couple months ago. But I think I can say publicly, they told me, we are not allowing this team to leave Florida, because I think they understand that this is the fastest growing state. It's the third largest state in the country. To have a major league team leave, that's not something we want, obviously, but actually it's bad for the league. It makes baseball look poorly that they couldn't hack it in really big markets. And so this, what I've said on the state, we are not taking your tax dollars to do any stadiums at the state level. Just not going to happen. Now, having said that, there are things that is appropriate for the state to do. For example, if someone buys the team and they want to build a nice new stadium, they can work with whatever local city and county if they want. But we help with like roads and exits and some stuff like that. But that's the proper role of government. So I think we'll be helpful within the confines of what's appropriate for taxpayers to be doing, but it will not involve at our level giving money for the construction of a stadium. Now, the Rays do need a new stadium. I think everybody understands that. I know that the current owner is basically not got a path forward in Pinellas County. I think that the goal would be, if there's a new owner, to then have an ability to do a stadium in a place that would be economically viable. And I think you can do it. I absolutely think it can work. We've now become the hockey capital of the world in the state of Florida. I mean, it's incredible. So you got the Panthers, they're lighting it up. I think they're up, 3-1, or they're up in that series big. The Lightning have had a great run. But what's happened is, as someone that grew up in the Tampa Bay area, there were probably 10 times more baseball fans than hockey fans when I was a kid. And yet, those hockey games do very well because, one, I think they had an owner that leaned in and really wanted to make this part of the community. Two, it was in an area where there's other things to do, so it was kind of like the place to be. And people would want to go, even if they weren't huge hockey fans, people liked it. I think you can absolutely do that with baseball. Look what Atlanta did with this battery that they have around the stadium. People go because there's like bars and restaurants and shops and stuff like that, and they really made it an experience for folks. And so that, I think, is the goal. So I don't know what's going to happen. I've been being told for years that the Rays were likely to be sold soon, and it hasn't really happened. Maybe we're getting closer to that now, but I'm confident that the team's not going to leave Florida. Obviously, the Tampa Bay area has had it for a long time, and I told people, I'm not saying, it should be in St. Pete, Tampa, Orlando, or any of that. My job as governor is to sit there. If I can be helpful to keep it in Florida, then I'm going to do that.
I did an article on this issue for the Epic Times, and one concern that I got from talking to a lot of people is that the IRS still likes to tax these fictional gains on gold or silver. Can you speak to how states can deal with the Trump administration try to remove that issue?
Yeah, I mean, well, one, this makes sure there's no sales tax in Florida on it, which I think is important. And I think this is in keeping with a lot of what the Trump administration's policies have been. They've embraced things like Bitcoin, for example, which is also a hedge against the fiat currency. So I don't think it would be something that would be out of character for where they've already gone. And I think as more states do this, I think they likely will be in a position where they probably want to act. So I feel good that we could probably get the feds to clear the way on this under current arrangements.
What's the next step in the state to make it fractional, transactional, and so on, as Kevin mentioned?
Do you want to address that? I mean, so basically, I mean, if Doug, you want to come and talk about the bill? I mean, we have to do a regulatory rule on this, and so that'll be done. And then these guys in the House and Senate have to approve that, which they will likely do, next January. And so we're looking at this being live no later than July 1st of 2026. But there will be some things that go into that.
Yeah, you basically hit it there. Bottom line is we gave within the bill the guidelines for Office of Finance Regulation, and what the bill requires is for them to give us then their framework, bring it back to us, that then we can ratify this next fall when we're back, and then from there, yes, there's a runway to allow for the technical side of things to work out all the bugs before it goes live. At the same time, at that point, we may have the ability to pull that back. I'm hopeful, Governor, to move that back to at least April 15th.
Sure.
That day might be a good day to move this back. So.
National level, we're hearing about Harvard. People here are very concerned about our educational institutions here in Florida. We're very controversial about it. I want to hear your thoughts on what's happening here with the situation with higher education in Florida.
Well, I can say we are #1 in the nation 8 years in a row in public university system. That's what you want to be. We've done a lot of things that have been path-breaking, and now I think you're seeing the Trump administration really lean in, and there have been articles, Wall Street Journal, I think a month or two ago, and then even the New York Times saying, if you want to see the direction, look to Florida and look what we've done. And the New York Times is kind of like pointing out these things, and they're trying to say how bad it is, and our voters are like, yes, thank you for doing that. But some of the things we did is one, we just laid down a marker. The goal of our university system is education, not indoctrination. We are not going to go down the road of a Columbia University or some of these places, which their whole academic programs have really been corrupted by ideology. We were the first state in the nation to eliminate DE&I from our public university system. We did that years ago. We did that a couple years ago, and when we did it, that was like going into the teeth of the monster, because every elite institution, not just higher ed, corporate America, government, federal government, they were all for this, and obviously I think people have seen it for what it is. So we really led, but in 2023, for us to do that was, we were standing alone at the time. Now the winds have shifted, and we've got the wind at our back on that. We've also recognized that public universities need to serve the interests of the people of the state of Florida. It's not just they have a right to just do whatever they want, and these faculty can do whatever they want, and then get money from the taxpayer without any accountability. That doesn't work. If you want to start your own private university and do that, that's fine. But in a public university, our goals are, we want academics focused on the pursuit of truth. We want to make sure that the programs are rigorous. And we want to make sure we're preparing our students to be citizens of this republic. Now, that was really what higher education was always through most of Western history until relatively recently, maybe the last many decades. And so we said that higher education has gone off kilter, and we're going to get it back on track. Now, part of the way you do that is to recognize that ultimately you can't have a situation where good professors who reject the prevailing campus leftism are blackballed by the existing faculty and not allowed to come in and get a tenured position. So what we did is two things. One, we now have law in place. All tenured professors must undergo review every 5 years and can be let go for poor performance. Now no one thought that was possible just a few years ago. The other thing we've done is we have taken the hiring and put it into the hands of the boards of trustees and the university presidents. So for example, you can now go, Florida State as president can go, if you want to hire somebody from Georgetown, you can do it, the board can do and approve it, and the faculty aren't allowed to blackball somebody who doesn't have the right, because we're basically, academia is, if you say what you really believe and it conflicts with orthodoxy, you're in trouble. And so you either got to bottle it up, you got to toe the party line or whatever. So we transcended. So they brought in a lot of great faculty. They processed out through the post-tenure review a lot of unproductive tenured faculty. And the professors that are the most political and activist tend to be the least productive on the core academic things. And I remember when the post-tenure review started, this was probably like a year ago, there was articles, there's a brain drain from Florida as professors are shown the door. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. If Marxist professors are leaving Florida, that is not a bad thing for Florida. That is a good thing for Florida. We've done major reforms. We have very clear expectations, and people that are involved in the universities have to meet those expectations. When they had the October 7th, 2023 attacks and the aftermath from those attacks by Hamas in Israel, and what Jewish students were facing on many college campuses around the country was disgusting. It was appalling. Yeah, you didn't see that in the state of Florida. You didn't see Columbia University in the state of Florida. And the reason is very simple. It wasn't luck that we didn't have it. It was just the simple fact that if any university president in our state allowed their university to turn into another Columbia, they would no longer be president of one of our universities. And we would make sure of that very quickly. Well, thanks, everybody. It's great to see you. We'll be back soon. God bless you. God bless the free state of Florida.